Yeah, so like Doug said, hi everybody. Yes, I drove from Phoenix this morning, so I'm sorry, I'm going to do my best to be as sharp as I can. But so I started working for Students for Life almost 5 months ago. It's coming up on 5 months. I went to Thomas Aquinas College for school, which is only about 40 minutes from here, a great place. But I just kind of talking a little bit about me and how I got into this, became so proactive and passionate about pro-life work is I was born in 1990, and it happens to be the year in our country with the most abortions in history since Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973. So almost 1.4 million babies died in 1990. And I am a twin and a preemie, and I was born only 9.5 months after my older sister. So my mom was in a very intense crisis pregnancy with twins right after giving birth to her first. And a lot of doctors would have told her, it's a dangerous pregnancy, you shouldn't go through with it. But she chose life for us. We were born at 7 months, both very little. My brother suffers from cerebral palsy. Actually, we both had hemorrhaging of the brain in the womb, and so it was very much a crisis pregnancy, but my mom chose life. And so, when I think about myself as how I could have been another statistic, another one of the babies in 1990 that was aborted by the grace of God, my mother chose life, but so many babies are not so lucky. So I feel very compelled to stand up for the unborn and to fight for them, and to, and to let people know, women especially, the joy that a baby is going to bring. I know with all the challenges that it brought to my mother and my father and our family at the beginning, they wouldn't change anything about what they decided. Having us is a great blessing, and I know my mom, I'm one of 11 now, and I know that she couldn't imagine life without any one of us. So I do want to spread that truth that all the challenges that you might be facing in a pregnancy, yes, it's unknown, yes, it can be scary, but the joy of meeting your baby and getting to raise that child is going to outweigh any circumstances. So that is my goal in working for Students for Life, to spread that message and to help people to spread that as well. And I know you guys watched Unplanned, so you do know a lot about Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. And how they are profiting off of abortions. So I thought a good follow-up to seeing that movie is learning how to dialogue effectively with people who, are pro-choice and come from a different angle. It can be daunting, and it can be hard to get our point across. People say often, you just care about the baby, you don't care about the mother. That's incredibly not true. We do this because we know that a woman is going to be happiest if she chooses life. So we want to equip you and the people that you touch on how to dialogue with people and really show them this isn't a matter of politics, this is a matter of morality. And it's been proven through science that a baby is a baby from the moment of conception. So that's what we want to make clear, and to just kind of equip people to talk about that on the sidewalks and in any conversation, in your day-to-day life. So, so you can go to the next slide. Sorry, I'm going to have to be prompting you. But so our goals are to dialogue effectively and persuasively, and to come at this argument from a philosophical and a scientific standpoint. So we know what abortion is, but we won't know that it's wrong unless we prove through science that the baby in the womb is a person. Because if it's not, then killing it or getting rid of it, it's not a matter of morality if it's not actually a person. So we first prove through science that it's a baby, and then we come through a philosophical standpoint of, well, if it's a human life, why is it wrong to take the life of that child? Because science doesn't tell us whether something's right or wrong, it just tells us facts, and then we have to use philosophy and morality to come to the truth about the fact that if it is a human in the womb, then at no point does anyone have the right to take its life. So that's how we will approach it from a scientific and then a philosophical standpoint. And I know that you guys are a Christian community, so you do have the strength of the Bible to back you up when you are conversing with people who are Christian but are also pro-choice. You can use the God argument, and before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That makes it very clear that yes, God had a plan for this child, and no one has the right to control it, not his parents, not anyone, except for God. God is the one in charge of that life. But we do encourage people to see that this isn't actually a religious matter. We don't want it to be about God, because you're not going to be able to, if you're discussing with an atheist or someone who doesn't have a religious background, they're not going to be transformed through the argument, well, the Creator. So we really want to come at this from a scientific and philosophical standpoint and not bring in religion. So that's how we argue. Yes, you do. Of course, you're more than welcome to bring in the Bible when you're discussing with someone, or faith when you're discussing with someone of faith. But we want to equip you to talk to anybody, even someone who's not going to have that background, because they will just dismiss it if you say, well, it's a child of God. So that's why we talk specifically about science and philosophy and not religion. Okay, next slide. And so the best way to do this, obviously, when you're discussing with someone who's at the other side of this argument, you want to make sure that you're listening to them, that you make it clear that you're not just there to talk and spout facts, you're there to help them and to guide them, and that you do just have their best interests at heart. We have this saying that people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So you want to make sure that you show them we love you and we want you to know what is best and to be happy. And we do this because we know that abortion will never make you happy. And telling other women that that's going to make them happy will only make people feel guilty, So we want to let them know we're there for them. Definitely it's important if they say something that you very much disagree with, you want to be kind and say, well, how did you come to that? How did you come to that conclusion? Telling more about why you believe what you believe, and really just make it a dialogue and make sure to listen, let it be a back and forth. And then finding common ground. It's really important when you're talking with someone to kind of see where they draw the line. Some people say if it has a heartbeat, then it shouldn't be aborted, or if it's viable, if it can survive outside of the mother's womb, then it shouldn't be aborted. Or some people will say it's fine all the way up to 9 months, but you still want to try to find the common ground. So that's why I brought these posters here. They show the stages of development inside a baby. They show that a baby can feel pain very, very early on. It's been proven that they can feel pain at least at 20 weeks, and it keeps getting, being proven earlier and earlier. It has a heartbeat at just 21 days, so 3 weeks. So some people might say, well, it doesn't have a heartbeat, it's not a person, but you say, actually, you can detect the heartbeat in an ultrasound at only 3 weeks. So would you say that if you can detect the heartbeat, then we should be, defending life? And at least there you can find some common ground on where they draw the line. And sadly, you will get people who do defend all the way up to 9 months. Some people even will defend for infanticide if the woman is, doesn't want dependency at all. If her little baby is dependent upon her even at 2 years old, 1 year old, breastfeeding, there are some people who will say, well, if it's dependent and the mother doesn't want that responsibility, she does have the right to, get rid of it. That is a very rare case. Sadly, it does happen though sometimes. But so it's when arguing with these people that you really, it's going to be tough, but you want to really have the facts to back you up. So the 3 categories are biology, and then you're going to constantly get questions like, what about circumstances for the mother? What about the case of rape or poverty, or she wants to finish and have a career, wants to finish school, have a career. They're going to bring things up like that, so we want to let you know how to respond to those questions as well. And then finally to talk about the faulty moral reasoning and this idea that abortion is a matter of choice. Because we know that choice is something like, what clothes you want to wear, or what ice cream you want to eat, or what job you want to have. Whether the baby inside of you has life should not be something that you can decide, because everyone says my body, my choice, but it's not actually the woman's body. If it was, then she would die every single time an abortion happened. But instead, a doctor stops the heart of something else. And it's important to see too that every time an abortion happens, the abortionist is only successful if he does stop a beating heart. So I know in Unplanned you guys saw the suction abortion. That was the first one that they showed, where she can kind of see the baby writhing on the ultrasound, and she can see its body being sucked out and it goes into the tube. That is a very common abortion. And the chemical abortion, which is the second one they show, that's becoming the second most common and rising and becoming more common because they are trying to sell these online now. you know, across the country. So, but also there are abortions that happen up to birth. You know, it's a very low percentage. I think only like 2%, but still there is a percentage that happens all the way up to birth. And in that instance, they actually inject the baby's heart with something to stop its heart. So it's basically like when you inject someone on death row. You know, you cause a heart attack, and then you deliver a stillborn child a few days after you inject. So that's, you know, and then in a saline abortion, they burn the baby alive by, you know, by injecting the womb with saline, and the baby will burn and once again be born stillborn. So it's very clear that something is being killed every time the doctor performs an abortion, and it's not the mother. And if it's unsuccessful, it's only unsuccessful because the baby that is delivered is alive. And that has happened before, especially most commonly in saline abortions, which is why they're not done anymore. But there have been people who, you know, it didn't work, they survived, they were delivered, and they, you know, they were alive when they came out. Some of the survivors are incredibly deformed now, but they have amazing testimonies. There's a woman named Gianna, I always forget her last name, but she is an amazing abortion survivor, and she does talk about this. Clearly that's a person, you know, she came out and they had tried to abort her, and she's a little baby right in front of them, you know. So it's the testimonies of people like this that do show how real it is, and how much we do need to fight. Sorry, next slide. So it's important to, you can go to the next one, you've already started covering this. So it's important to see what the preborn are, if it's truly going to be determined that it's wrong to kill them. You know, it's not really wrong to squish an ant, so, you know, things like that, that's not the same as a human life. You know, so it's really important to see, well, what is this that we are killing? Because if it is just a clump of cells, if it is just part of the mother, like a tumor that we're taking out, we don't have an argument, so we need to show what the preborn are. And you know, a lot of people will say, no one really agrees when life begins. That's not actually an argument for why it isn't wrong. There was a time when people didn't agree that, you know, African Americans should be enslaved. Some people thought they should, some people thought they shouldn't. But clearly there was a right answer and a wrong answer there. So we want to make sure that that it's not a thing that people talk about as, well, your opinion is your opinion and my opinion is mine. What you think is right is great for you, what I think is right is great for me. There are certain things where that just doesn't add up, because there was a time when slavery was okay. And it took people to fight to say, this isn't a choice, this is something that is morally wrong, and we need to fight for it. You know, there was a time in our country where slavery was legal. And we had to work to make it illegal, and then we had to work to make it unthinkable. And that's what we're doing now with abortion, because we believe it is the same kind of thing. It's not a choice, it's a moral issue that must be stopped. We need to make it illegal first, and then we need to make it unthinkable. So very important to kind of point out, well, why is it different from slavery? How is it different from one human being discriminating against another human being? So what are the preborn? You can go to the next slide. So we know from science, actually, that from the moment of conception, the zygote has 23 chromosomes from its father and 23 chromosomes from its mother. And it is something that is entirely different from the father and entirely different from the mother, or else it would suddenly have, you know, 92 chromosomes instead of 46. You know, so it's very clear that something different has been created. They are unique and they have their own set of DNA from the moment of conception. So clearly something else has been created from its parents. And so that's how we know that it is a new entity. It's not part of the mother or the father. You can go to the next slide. We know that it's alive because in the womb it is growing from the moment that it begins. It is absorbing energy, it is, you know, responding to stimuli, it's metabolizing. It's very clear that it is growing bigger and bigger, so it must be alive. You know, if it wasn't living, it wouldn't be growing. And we see that with anything else in the world. You know, if you see that a flower is blooming, a tree is growing in your backyard, you see that there is life in that thing. It isn't dead because it is growing. So if the baby in the womb is doing those same things that we acknowledge for plants and animals, you know, why are we just deciding that this is something that we can snuff the life out of? And I find it very interesting, you know, when you talk about the terms of like a pregnant animal, like an elephant who's pregnant with a baby elephant. I don't think anyone would look at that and not be excited. Like, it's very clear that that's an elephant, you know? And they would talk about the mom being pregnant with her baby elephant. But the second it becomes an issue of the mother wants to abort, we just kind of change that whole reality. We change the way we talk about it to make it seem okay. But the fact of the matter is that no elephant has ever made the choice to abort her child. It's very much in the nature of animals to be protective and to be, especially with mothers, they are very protective of their young. You know, if you encounter a mama bear in the woods, she is going to defend her babies to the death. And that's how we ought to be as well. It should be entirely in our nature to protect our babies with everything that we have. And we really do a disservice to people, and to women especially, to tell them that you have the choice. Because really what they want deeply in their heart is to follow that maternal instinct and protect. And it's just factors in our life like fear or doubt that will cause us to make the wrong decision. And a lot of the time it just takes one person to speak out to give a woman that strength. But if you're the one telling the woman, oh, this is what you have to do in order to be happy, it's very sad that it often is only due to the coercion of others that women make this decision, because it really does go against everything they believe in and that they feel, you know. So we need to be the ones speaking out. So it's distinct, it is living. We know that it is whole because it is self-directed. You know, it acts on its own. The mother is not causing it to grow in any way. Yes, she has to eat and, you know, provide the baby with nutrients in a certain way, but everything happening to the baby in the womb is kind of separate from her, and she doesn't have a say of how big it is, or whether it kicks, or whether, you know, whether she can feel it, or how, you know, how it grows. And that's because it is self-directed. It is a zygote that's being developed from within. And it's important too to point out that it's not as if it's getting parts gradually. You know, when we make like an inanimate thing, when we make a car, it takes all of its parts for it to suddenly work properly. But we like to think about the baby in the womb kind of like a Polaroid camera, to give an analogy this way, to make it clear to people that from the very moment that it began, it had all of its parts, and it just was a matter of letting it grow. So when you take a snapshot with a Polaroid camera, you know, right at the beginning it just looks like smudges. You know, it doesn't look like a picture, but the picture is entirely there. You just have to wait a little while and shake it and let the image show up. So it's just a matter of time to let it develop. For it to show that it actually was there the whole time. With the baby, it's the same. From the very beginning of conception, all of its parts were already there, and it's just a matter of allowing those things to grow and develop over time to be able to see what it truly is, which is a human being. But it's not like, you know, at day 4, it's not a baby, and then give it a few months, all of a sudden, boom, it's a human. No. Something human, like if you are human, then you always were, because you can't suddenly grow into something else at a random time, you know? No matter how much a tree wants to grow into a tree, or if it wants to be a person, it's never going to start as a tree and all of a sudden be a person. In the same way, you know, whatever we are now, we always were from the very beginning. You can't just change that at the drop of a hat. And then when we do see that we're whole and living and distinct, well, what is that living thing? You can go to the next slide. It's obvious that if its parents are human, then it also must be a human. This picture is showing that, you know, that's a ridiculous picture, you know, to say that 2 parents can beget a cat. You know, if it was 2 cats in the picture with a little kitten, that would make sense. But human beings can only create other human beings. So if something is alive and whole and distinct inside of a mother, a female, then the only thing it can be is also a human being. You know, you are what your parents are. By law, biogenesis, like begets like. And as much as I might want to have a dolphin, I could never give birth to a dolphin someday. You know, I can only have a person. And likewise, a cat can only have a cat. And so it's very clear that if something is growing and alive inside of a woman, it must be a human being as well. And it's important to see that that was always, that's how it always was from the very beginning. because it was growing and it was alive, it must have been human from the beginning, or else it would grow into something other than human. But every baby comes out and is a human being. So we need to, sometimes it can be interesting to have to kind of think this through, because it does seem very obvious to a lot of people, but sadly we do have to kind of discuss these things, because people are going to want to deny that it is a human being. It's just a clump of cells. Well, it's not. It's kicking its legs, it has a beating heart, it has a little head. It's clearly not a clump of cells. You can go to the next slide. So this is just pictures of different creatures inside of the womb. You can tell exactly what each of them is. The top one is a little puppy, that one is a dolphin, that one is an elephant, and that one is a human being. And if you showed a picture of any of the other three to a person, I don't think anyone would say that the one in the corner is not an elephant. I think everyone would agree that's an elephant, and right above it, yep, that's a dolphin. Yep, that's a puppy. Wow. And then you show the little baby at the bottom, and they'll say, it's a fetus, it's a clump of cells. And then you'll ask, well, why isn't the elephant a clump of cells? Why isn't the dolphin a clump of cells? Why isn't the puppy a clump of cells? And they won't have an argument, they'll probably say, oh, it is, then why did you say before that it was an elephant? So it's really important to show these pictures that yes, the baby is small. It doesn't look quite exactly as it would when it comes out, but it is clearly a baby and nothing else. So it's important to show that to people. And there are books that have been written that show that human life begins at conception. So when people give you that argument, actually it hasn't been proven, you can say, yes, it has. Biologists have shown that it does begin at conception because of its uniqueness and its self-directedness. And even pro-choice biologists have conceded to the fact that, yes, it is a baby at conception. I'm sure that they get upset admitting that, because they say, don't use this for your pro-life argument. There have been, they don't want to explain that, because yes, it will only strengthen our argument that why can they be killed if they're people, but it has been proven through science that they are babies from the moment of conception. You can go to the next slide. So yes, this is, I love this picture. But yeah, a lot of people will say this is just a fetus, and actually fetus is just Latin for young one. So it's simply a determination of time and development. So really calling something a fetus is no different from calling it a toddler, or a teenager, or an adult, or a senior. It's just simply a different stage in the development of that human being. So to say that the baby in the womb doesn't deserve life, isn't worthy of life, isn't the same. It's basically saying the older you are, the more important you are. So the teenager has more of a right to life than the toddler, and the toddler has more of a right to life than the one-year-old infant, and the infant has more of a right to life than the baby in the womb. But with that logic, you will be saying that certain human beings have more of a right to life than others, even ones that are born, because you're saying you're determining humanity and worth based on time and development, and how old you are and how far along you are. So that's a good argument to give, that really there's no difference between a fetus and a toddler except for months and years. The fetus in the womb is, between a day or a moment old and 9 months old, or maybe 7 months old and it's born at 7 months, but it's really important to see that it's just a difference in time. And it's actually really interesting to look at those examples of babies born prematurely, or through C-section or something, because a lot of people will say you're not a human being until you're birthed from your mother, when you come out, and it's like, well, some babies come out through C-section at only 6 months, but, technically you would have been okay with them being aborted because they should have still been in the womb. Does the baby born at 6 months have less of a right to life than the baby born naturally at 9? Clearly not, and some babies have been born as early as 21 weeks and are surviving due to technology and incubators, amazing things. And in most states, abortion is legal at 21 weeks. In Arizona, abortion is legal at 16. In New Mexico, abortion is legal at 9 months. So when you talk about these things, you say, if you're really okay with aborting a baby at 9 months, then you're saying that the baby born at 6 months wasn't a person. And then if they say, actually, that's not true, then you're saying that it's only a difference of space. You're saying that once it's out of the womb, it's a person. When it's in the womb, it's suddenly not. Why are you discriminating based on placement or based on age? It literally is just a matter of discrimination. Our president talks about it as being fetus phobic. If you bring that up, it will strike some chords with people. They don't want to be declared phobic of anything because it makes them look not all-inclusive. But it is true that people who are discriminating against babies in the womb are having some fear or aversion against a fetus, a tiny little baby, and it is being phobic of a certain kind of person. What is that person? That is the preborn. So it's just very important to think about that and to look at the fact that if you are saying the baby in the womb is not a person, but the toddler is, you're only discriminating based on time and development. And then we get issues like, well, there are babies being aborted with disabilities. You're saying because they have a disability, they have less of a right to life. Does that mean if someone who is already born, if they're more intelligent than another person, do they have more of a right to life simply because of their intelligence or their age or being stronger and taller? It's all just based on these subjective factors, but truly the only thing that equalizes all of us is that we're all equally human. Whether we are a man or a woman doesn't matter. Whether we are black or white doesn't matter. Whether we are tall or short doesn't matter. Whether we are 2 or 22 doesn't matter. None of those things matter. They are all just secondary factors. The only thing that matters is our essential humanity. And the second you put factors on that, you decide that certain human beings are more important than others. And look in the past how that has worked out. Slavery, the Holocaust, horrible discriminations of one kind of person to another kind of person simply because of their decision that what we want is important and these people are lesser based on their skin color or their race or their religion. All of those things, it's someone putting a factor on a human characteristic and saying they're less important and less worthy of humanity simply because of some factor that they cannot control. And that will cause discrimination of all kinds. And we need to see that actually the only thing that makes us worthy is the fact that we are human beings. And you don't even have to bring in the, created in the image and likeness of God, although that will help sometimes. But it doesn't matter, nothing matters except that we are human beings. That one essential characteristic makes us priceless and makes our lives very valuable and not up to the, the control of anyone. Besides a creator. Okay, you can go to the next slide. We kind of already discussed on this, nothing non-human becomes human by getting older or bigger, so clearly the baby is already, if it's human when it comes out, it's always been human. Sorry, next slide. This is just showing that because we already went through the science, now we're going to go to the philosophy. So we did kind of cover all the reasons why biology shows us that the baby is in fact a human being. So now we have to talk about, well, if it is a human being, then when do the rights of the human being begin? Because if it is a human, we just decided that, why doesn't it have the same rights from the moment of conception that every other human being has? Science will tell us facts and truth about factual evidence, but it doesn't actually tell us what's right or wrong. So what should we do with this knowledge that the baby in the womb is a human being? So that's where we go next. We have this 10-second pro-life apologist argument. It's a very good syllogism, but we already kind of covered it, just that if the preborn is growing in the womb, isn't it alive? Yes, it is. If it has human parents, isn't it human? Yes, it is. It can't be anything else. And if living humans like you and me each have their own human rights, all equally, then why don't the babies in the womb have human rights as well? So that's what we're going through now. Just kind of pointing out that if they are human beings, why don't they get to be treated with equal rights? You can go to the next slide. So this is we have a SLED test, which kind of will show that the baby in the womb should have always been treated as a human being, but it's being treated not as a person. So we have size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency, which we have kind of already touched on. But, yes, the baby in the womb is very, 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 very small. But compared to a 6'5", 40-year-old big, strong man, the toddler that is only 2 years old also is very, very, very small. So if you place the humanity of that child on its size, then you're just saying that a grown man has the right to, to put his power on someone younger or weaker or smaller than him. And then you just say, fine, it's okay for the strong to prey upon the weak. And clearly everyone will say, no, it is not okay for the strong to prey upon the weak. Well, the babies in the womb are the weakest among us. They have no voice, they have no strength, they cannot be seen, they cannot be heard. They are as weak as it gets, and the people making decisions about their life are the strong in this scenario. You know, if a little baby is abused by an adult, everyone will see that as a moral evil, something that is terribly wrong. But suddenly when it's the mother and father making a decision to end the life of their little baby in the womb, suddenly it's a matter of choice and a matter of opinion and a matter of human rights. Why is it only human rights when you can see the baby? You know, why is it only wrong if you can look at the child? And I think that really is the issue. Because you can't see the little baby in the womb, because you can't hear it cry out, because you can't see it try to defend itself, we just pretend that it's okay to kill them. Which is why I think it's important to see that Abby Johnson's conversion happened, because she was able to see the baby on the ultrasound. She was able to see that something was fighting for its life and trying to protect itself. Something weak and vulnerable. In the same way, I think it's because she was able to see that visually that she had a change of heart. So sadly, you know, I wish everyone could see what was happening right before they aborted their baby, because if they could see it, they would say, stop, 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 oh my goodness, that's my child. You know, which is why the majority of women who actually get to see their baby on their ultrasound will have a change of heart. It is the biggest cause of women changing their minds, is seeing that ultrasound. Which is why at places like Planned Parenthood, they will often make it so the ultrasound does look kind of just like a blob of tissue. They make it so the women don't see that, don't hear the heartbeat. You know, so a lot of women don't know what's happening. And I do know a story of a woman who had multiple abortions, and she went in again for an abortion, and somehow she was able to see the baby on the ultrasound. I think they were trying to get it into her head, you need to stop having abortions, you've had too many. You know, like even some people who are pro-choice say, I wouldn't want you to make this decision all the time, but maybe just one or two. You know, they do say, if you've had 9, okay, you're crazy, but for those special circumstances, 1 or 2 is okay. So I think even the people who were, even the abortion workers were saying, are you sure you want another abortion? So they finally showed her the truth of what they were doing. They showed her her ultrasound, and she left, she ran out of the room screaming, crying, and realized, wow, I've aborted all of my children. You know, she was seeing all of those babies that I thought were just a clump of cells were actually my children. And you can imagine the trauma that would have caused her to finally see the truth. And so sadly, so many places are lying to these women. You know, the abortion industry is lying to these women, wanting them to believe that it's just a clump of cells, but they know what they're doing, and the abortionists know what they're doing, and they know that they are stopping a human heart. There have been countless doctors who have had a change of heart and now give testimonies of the fact that they always knew that they were ending a life. So that's why we do need to speak out, because clearly, you know, those babies in the womb are human beings, and mothers will see that as soon as they get to look at their little baby. So yeah, that makes me sad that it really does seem like a matter of just, you can see the child, and so when you can look at it, it's hard to hurt it, but when you can't see it, it makes it easier, and that's very sad. And then the other level of development, environment and degree of dependency, we've kind of touched on this as well. But how developed you are should not matter. A person's a person, no matter how small. So it is true that it shouldn't matter how developed. That does not determine your humanity. Otherwise, teenagers would be less valuable than their parents, and clearly that's not the case. And environment. You know, a lot of people will say, this baby's going to be born into a very poor situation, so it would be better to just not have it be born at all. That's kind of a slap in the face to anybody who's been raised in an impoverished environment. You're saying, I'd rather you have died than have to go through this difficult situation. Of course, that's not true. And even people who grow up in difficult circumstances and difficult environments are grateful for their lives. You know, they wouldn't say, I would rather have never been given life than been able to have a hard life and kind of try to grow out of those circumstances. In the same way, your environment outside of the womb doesn't determine your worth. Also, you shouldn't be determined, your worth should not be determined just because you're inside your mother's womb. If you're walking on the sidewalk or if you're inside your mother's womb, the only difference there is place. One is just not being able to be seen. So your environment should not determine anything about your worth, and the same way degree of dependency shouldn't. And this is a really big issue to talk about, degree of dependency, because we are seeing in our world that euthanasia is becoming normal. They are legalizing it in certain states, saying if you're going to be in a very difficult illness and it's going to be hard to take care of you and you don't know if you want to go through the suffering, we can just give you the death by dignity pill and you can just end it all now. And I just found out from a nurse actually that some places are offering that as an alternative to chemotherapy. So instead of letting you fight your cancer, they're honestly giving you the choice now. Do you not want to suffer through this? You can just end it now. And how sad is that we're making people think, my life isn't as important to be fought for because it's going to be a challenge. We need to be fighting for anyone who is sick or old or weak or in a tough situation. We need to be telling them, we are going to walk you through this every step of the way, and we're going to do whatever we can to save your life, no matter the circumstances. And then you say that, and then you think of the exact same argument for a little baby in the womb. We are going to fight for your life, no matter the circumstances, no matter how hard. And that should be how we approach every single human life. Yes, many pregnant women find themselves in difficult circumstances. Yes, they find themselves in tough situations where it can be difficult, but we want to be showing them the choice here is to do whatever you can to give that baby life. And that's going to be what's going to make you happy, because that's the moral thing to do. If we have this idea that the second it gets hard, we can just get rid of that life, then what are we telling to parents who suffer from children who are dying of cancer at the age of 3? There are horrible things that happen. And if we just kind of say, well, this is going to be a challenge, we got to wash our hands of it, it's really just a slap in the face to anyone who's gone through something very difficult and fought with their child or their loved one or their spouse, fought with someone to do whatever they can to save them. Because that's what we should be doing, and that's what's going to give us the most joy. We have this idea in society that, a career or money or power of some kind is going to make us happy, pleasure is going to make us happy. But everybody knows from experience that what makes them happy is giving of themselves and helping others. So how could abortion ever make you happy? How could making the decision to end your child's life ever make you happy? It's just going to leave you empty and regretful. In the same way that if you didn't fight with everything you could to save your mother or father or sister or spouse who was dying of cancer, everybody says, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure they get through this. And if you didn't do everything you could, I'm sure you would be left feeling this what if, this empty feeling. That's how we should feel if ever we don't fight for any person who is weak or vulnerable or in need of our help. So none of these factors matter. All that matters is that we are human. We are a part of the human race and brothers and sisters of one another. We are called to help each other in every moment. Next slide. So this is a very difficult situation. A lot of people will say, yes, it's human, but it's not a person. So like I was saying, the value of the human being is changed and determined on the circumstances of that human being. So yes, it's a person, yes, it's a human, but the mother's life is more important than the baby's life, and she should have the decision to take its life if she wants to. But when we say, and even in the womb, they say it's a human being, but it can't feel pain, so it doesn't deserve life yet, or it doesn't have a heartbeat, or it doesn't have. A lot of people say it doesn't have a reason. It can't reason for itself. It can't make decisions, so it's not really a person. And a 2-year-old can't really make decisions. It knows that it gets hungry, it knows that it's tired, but it doesn't make decisions. It's very dependent. We're very dependent on other human beings for a long time. And our humanity and our worth, even at a very young age, it doesn't matter if we're not very capable yet. That's the same for a little baby. And the second we say, well, personhood is humanity plus something else, plus being really strong, or plus being really smart, or being able to reason, you know, or feel pain. It's like some people actually have a condition where they don't have, their brain doesn't work right, and they can't feel that they're burning their hand. Because they can't feel that they're burning their hand, does that mean they're not a person? No, it means they have something about them that is a little bit different from somebody else, but they still are equally human and equally have a right to life. If you can't hear, are you less of a person because your sense doesn't work like that? You know, your hearing doesn't work in the same way as someone else? Of course not. Deaf people have a right to life as much as anybody else, and anybody with a disability has a right to life as much as anybody else. So in the same way, whether or not a baby in the womb can feel pain, or, you know, can sense its surroundings, or know that it even has a family, that doesn't matter. What it knows or what it does not determine its worth. All that determines its worth is that it is a human being. And the second we start saying you're a human but you're not a person, because you can't do this or this or this or this, that's how we get to the personhood abuses that have plagued our world for a very long time. So we already touched on slavery and the Holocaust, you know, and saying, you know, women don't deserve the same rights as men. There have been so many countless times in history where one person was seen as lesser than another, and it was always wrong, and it just took a while for everybody to figure it out, everybody to get there, you know. And, you know, there was a time when abortion was illegal, because it should have been, because it's evil. And people just push this idea that without abortion, women can't, you know, they don't have their equal rights, and it's absurd, it's absurd. God gave women the ability to create life. What a great and amazing blessing and gift. And to say that you can only do what men do by taking away that part of you, by kind of just smashing that beautiful gift of being able to create life, that's actually to be really insensitive and unfeeling to women, to say there's something about them they were created with that actually is only a hindrance and something that's going to keep them from being equal to man. We need to really be showing the world that we are separate but equal. We are different but equal. God did not make us all male. He made us male and female on purpose, because if there were only men or only women, the world would be lacking something great. We need both to do the things that, you know, this world needs to accomplish. You know, and as much as a man might want to, he can't have children. We need women to have children, and that's a great thing that they can do. They have this innate ability to nurture and protect and to love and to be caring in a certain way that men don't have it as naturally. So there are certain things men have more naturally than women, and women have more naturally than men. And it doesn't make them one better than the other. It just makes them different, and thank God. So we need to be telling people that it doesn't matter if you are different or if you have, you know, certain gifts that other people don't. You're not more loved or valued based on what you can do. It's really just you are a human being that is worthy of being protected at all times. You can go to the next slide. You can keep going. This is just an image of the personhood abuses that have happened in the past. It's good to see examples. I often do compare abortion to the Holocaust, and some people get very offended, especially some people who are Jewish. They have been upset before that I would ever compare. And you know, I tell them, well, you know my belief that the baby in the womb is a human being, correct? Yes. And what happened in the Holocaust was horrible. You know, Hitler decided certain people did not deserve to live and killed 6 million Jews in the process. Since Roe v. Wade, over 65 million babies have been aborted. So I say to those people, if you know that I know that the baby in the womb is a baby, how would I not be enraged? How would I not be seeing the correlation there, but also times 10? Because it's not 6 million, it's 65. You know, so over 10 times as many babies have been aborted than Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. So how are we not crying with outrage and sadness over this same massacre, this kind of massacre, which is the same kind of thing, a discrimination of one person by another person? It really is no different, but because it's a feminine issue and the world wants to tell us no one should tell a woman what to do with her body, we have tricked ourselves into thinking that to stand up for abortion is to stand up for women's rights. But then I would ask you, what about the rights of the little baby girl in the womb? Because she's a woman too, with as much potential as any other woman ever did have. You know, every single one of us was once a fetus in our mother's womb. And if our mothers hadn't chose life for us, then none of us would be here. So what's going to happen if all of a sudden every woman starts not choosing life? We will just stop being a people. You know, we will stop existing. So every life that has ever been created only came about because of the yes of its mother. And you know, Ronald Reagan said, I noticed that everybody who is pro-life or pro-choice has already been born. And that's a very important distinction to make. You know, you only have a voice to say yes or no to this because you were given the gift of life. You know, and a lot of people will say, well, if my mom had wanted to abort me, great, that would have been her choice. But of course they can say that because they're standing right in front of you and are able to speak. I really do think if it came down to it, you know, if they were in that moment, if they were able to see what it would look like knowing that their mother could be aborting them, you know, they would never say yes to that question. Everybody has a sense of self-preservation and is so grateful for the gift of life that has been given to them. Just as they would want no one else to say this baby themselves does not deserve to live, we don't have the right to say that of anyone else. So just as you are grateful that your mother gave life to you, you should be fighting for every other baby whose mom hasn't chosen life yet. To let those women know your baby deserves to live just as much as you deserve to live, and your mother, you know, and your mother deserved to live, and your mother deserved to live. It's just this whole chain of humanity. We are all dependent on our human mothers and sisters. If someone hadn't taken a leap for us, we wouldn't be here. And the same is true for every baby that's going to exist. So we need to be fighting for them. Next slide. And then they will bring this up. Yes, okay, it's a human being. Yes, okay, it's a person. But what about the circumstances of the mother? Why is the, you know, if the mother is really in a difficult situation, she should have the right to make the decision to end her baby's life for the sake of her own life. So it's really important when they do bring this up, because they will. Most commonly, they bring up the case of rape. It's really important to remember the dialogue principles that we went over in the beginning. To listen carefully, to be very kind and empathetic, especially because a lot of people who bring up these circumstances have been a part of the circumstances before. You know, they might have had a sister who was raped or know someone who was raped, and so these matters are very close and personal to them and intense and painful. So you want to make sure that you acknowledge the pain and the challenges of those situations. I'm so sorry for women who have to go through these things. I'm so sorry that a woman in poverty might be feeling afraid to, you know, to give life, or, you know, if she was raped, yes, that is incredibly scary, and we do want, you know, punishment for the crimes committed against her, but who should be punished in that situation? Is it the baby, or is it the person who raped her? You know, it's punishment for the person who commits the crime, but abortion is never going to solve any of these problems. You know, all of these circumstances, her career, her age, her unwanted pregnancy, you know, whether she doesn't have support or not, whether she's at a health risk, none of that's suddenly going to get solved if she has an abortion. You know, if you're poor and you don't have your baby, does that all of a sudden make you not poor? No. So the issue there is that we need to be helping her find resources to help her have the money she needs, have the support she needs, get the job she needs, you know. Yes, she wants a career. Okay, great. So we make sure that the campus is equipped to have mothers with babies on their campus, you know, daycare, free, and there are pregnancy centers all over, and people just don't know it because Planned Parenthood markets a lot, and they target colleges and they target minority neighborhoods. They do want people thinking this is your only option, this is your only choice. But actually, there are 3,000 pregnancy centers in America and only 600 abortion facilities. So when you think about that, we really don't need Planned Parenthood, and I think doing the math, every pregnancy center in the country would need to take 2 more clients a week in order to make up for the Planned Parenthood clients. That would be losing their, you know, the services of Planned Parenthood if Planned Parenthood were to go out of business. So we need to be marketing all of these, all that is available to women, because there is so much. And we need to be telling them, oh great, or you want to finish school? Great, we're going to help you with that. We're going to get you a job, we're going to make sure you have a babysitter, we're going to get you clothes and money, all that you need. community. And you know what a great thing when you see a girl like walking across the stage at her graduation with getting her diploma, and she's got a little 3-year-old on her hip. You know, there are these amazing stories, and if she had those women who choose life, there's such a testament to us of the strength and the ability that women have to do so many things. And that is true empowerment, to say you can be a mom and you can have it all. You know, you can go to school and you can still have your baby. And for the women, you know, the women who don't choose life, sadly they're never able to stand up strong on that stage and get their diploma and say, I did this and I had my baby. It's all these lost opportunities to make such a wonderful and beautiful statement of how powerful women actually are. And to tell women, oh, you can only have your career if you choose to, you know, not be a mother. It's really the opposite of empowerment. And we've just decided to make women believe that true empowerment is being able to be exactly like a man. But that's not true at all. True empowerment is to tell a woman that she can embrace everything about herself, and embrace it happily and with conviction, and say, I'm going to do everything that I want to do, and I'm going to do it well because I can. You know, women have a great, we are thought to be very good at multitasking. You know, we have this great gift to do many things at once, and God did that on purpose. Or even if you don't believe in a creator, it is clear that women are like that. And it's because they have to balance a lot of things, because they have to be mothers and protectors, and they have to work sometimes, be working moms. You know, these are amazing things that women are able to do because they naturally were given those gifts. And to snuff out one for the other is just to tell a woman to not embrace everything about herself and to kind of belittle herself. And yeah, that really is the opposite of telling a woman that she is strong. So we need to be glorifying what women can do, and helping them in these difficult situations, but not convincing them that the answer is to get rid of her motherhood. Because in the end, the difficult situation she's in is going to be solved by us rallying together and supporting her, and not by getting rid of her child. So all of these circumstances, you know, all of these issues that might come up for a woman, you need to be pointing out, well, yes, I really acknowledge those. Those are sad. Those are, I feel bad for her that she's going through that. But the baby should never have to suffer for that. We care about the mother and the baby, and we want to help them both to fulfill their dreams and fulfill what they were intended for. People will say often, you know, you only care about the baby, but of course that's not true. We want the woman to leave the clinic as much because we love her and we want her to be happy as we want to save her child. You know, it should be an equal love there. We want to save the baby, yes, but we also want to save the mother. And her problems are not going to be solved by getting rid of her baby. It's only going to be exacerbated because on top of her difficult situation, she's going to have the guilt and sadness and pain of a very dangerous and, you know, emptying abortion. Abortion does not, it doesn't end your pregnancy, or it does end your pregnancy, but it doesn't make you not a mother, it just makes you the mother of a dead child. And a mother will feel that very intensely. You know, there will always be something in her that knows this is something I gave up. And she will feel the loss of her baby, even if she doesn't meet it. You know, it's a great blessing for the women who do get to see their babies face to face. It's this amazing moment. But I do this, and I weep the most over the women who I know could have seen their babies and didn't get the chance to feel that, you know, that connection and that love. And they will in heaven, God willing. But for the whole time that they are on earth missing their baby, that's just going to be more pain added to the situation that they thought was bigger than their baby. But nothing is greater than that love and that connection of mother and child. So we really need to be telling women, we want to help you through any circumstance, but we want to make your life more fulfilled and happy by allowing you to be a mother at the same time. So that's very important to focus on. That giving the baby life is actually also going to just make the mother's life, the woman's life, all the more wonderful. We're not saying, give up all of your happiness for the sake of your child. We're saying, this child is going to be your happiness. A happiness that exceeds anything you could ever imagine. So much better than your job or having money or having a plan. Yes, it can turn your world upside down, but in the best way. And I think some of the greatest things in life are the things that surprise us. So it's really important to see that. And we actually have, I know a girl who went through 2 abortions and got pregnant a 3rd time. And she was in school and she had gone through the horrible pain of her abortions, and she just said, I can't go through this again. So she found our Students for Life group that she knew was on campus because we had been, they had been advertising themselves. She found them and they walked her through her whole pregnancy. They got her the support she needed. They took her to the pregnancy center. And her little boy, Oliver, was born during COVID. I think last either September or October. And she was kind enough to write a blog for us, tell us her story, and just to tell us too that she can't imagine her life without Oliver, and now all she wants to do is keep making babies. Because everything that she thought was going to be so difficult and so challenging just ended up being the greatest blessing in her life, and something she could never imagine her life without. So that's very important to see too. The testimonies of these women who, were in that difficult situation and made the decision to choose life. Their happiness and their love of their babies is just all the more a testament to women who might be struggling with that same decision. They can be actually the strongest case for choosing life that there is. Because a lot of people might say, well, you don't know, you've never been in the circumstance, and it's true, I have never been in the circumstance, but there are women who have, and now have the great gift of speaking out. And there are women also who sadly, make the other choice, who choose to abort and are left so wounded and full of pain. When they are able to seek the healing they need, they're also able to be such a testament to the beauty of choosing life, and to, like Abby Johnson, she had 2 abortions and now she's like the greatest pro-life activist of all time. And her story is more compelling because she went through the other side. She was someone who was pro-choice and working for 7 years as the director of a Planned Parenthood, and now she's doing her best to show women you can get out of this life, and then there were none, is saving so many workers and giving them more opportunities to see that, yes, this was my past, but it doesn't have to be my future. It can be something I turn my back on, and that I can teach other people the truth that abortion is not empowering, that it is not a beautiful thing, and it's something that's going to leave you empty and scarred and sad. So it is really important too, whenever you're talking, if you have the opportunity to let people know there is healing for people who have gone through abortions, that can be very effective, because you never know the seeds you're planting, and the people who really might need to hear that they can heal from this too, and come out as, as activists, people teaching others to not go through this whole, the same thing, So very important. And the more we talk about all the opportunities that there are and how we do have support for you and healing for you and help for you, the more people will see, okay, maybe this is something I can do. There are so many women who went through an abortion, and they've admitted now that if they had just had one person to tell them not to do it, they would have, and it's just that nobody said not to. And that really breaks my heart. I love being on the sidewalk because I just hope when I'm at an abortion clinic that someone will see that I have, that I'm there for them, and that, if you hold your sign up, you never know how that's going to affect someone. If you're praying there or talking to this woman, maybe you'll speak out and you'll let them know we can help you, and that will change your mind. Just that one look of support. You never know how you're going to change someone, so it's very important to see that as well. Next slide. We already went through this. I think we skipped like a few because it all just goes through the dialogue principles, so you can keep going. Sorry, keep going. Yeah, actually this is something I probably should bring up. It's really helpful. When you are dialoguing with those people whose minds will not be swayed in the difficult circumstance situation, you can trot out the toddler, that's what we call the argument, and it basically just proves that killing a child is never an answer to the situation that you're in. And we show that by drawing a parallel with a baby that has already been born. So we say, if a family's in a very impoverished situation, say they have 3 kids and they find out they're pregnant with their 4th, and so they decide they're going to abort their first child, or the baby that they're expecting, you can say, well, actually, it would make more sense in that case to kill a baby that's already been born, because they're the ones taking resources, they're the ones needing money and care and time. The baby in the womb doesn't really need any specific support in that moment. The mom kind of just, by nature, because God is amazing, just is able to provide for her baby just by providing for herself. But the 3 babies already outside of the womb are the ones needing clothing and food and help and time. So we say, wouldn't it make more sense to kill the 2-year-old? And, you know, that does make people think, and they say, well, of course not, you can't do that. And they say, when you have to say, well, why can't you? And they'll say, because it's a child. And then you say, well, we already determined the baby in the womb was a child too. So why is it any different? Because you've already gone through the fact that it is a human being. You know, that it is growing and alive and is a human. It's just as much a human as a 2-year-old, and the only difference is development. So why is it okay to kill the baby in the womb, but it's not okay to kill the 2-year-old? You know, people will say, a woman who is raped, she ought to be able to abort her baby because of the pain that situation caused. Maybe the baby will, you know, maybe that baby reminds her of the situation. Then you say, well, what if that woman chooses life, and 3 years down the road, she looks into her baby's face, and for whatever reason, she happens to see something, and it reminds her of the rapist. You know, maybe he looks like his father a little bit, and so she's reminded of that horrible situation. Should she be able to kill her 3-year-old who reminded her of that difficult circumstance? Once again, everyone will say no, because it's a child. And then you say, why should that little baby in the womb suffer for the exact same reason, simply because it is in the womb? And if you do say that it's fine, then you are simply discriminating against place and time. And that is a very effective argument, and sadly, sometimes people will, in those moments, argue for infanticide. It has been done. But that's when you can see that there are just extreme cases where people will never cave in this idea that the mother's life is more important than the baby in the womb. But then they're just saying that anybody who is dependent upon by another is able to be killed. You know, people who defend for infanticide in those moments, you're saying anybody who feels like someone else is taking their time and attention and they don't want to do it, you would have a right to kill them. Because that's what infanticide is saying. And that's, you know, in the same way when you decide that, you know, to euthanize an elderly person who's a burden to you, you know, that is sadly something that is happening. One person stronger is deciding to end the life of one person weaker, and it's no difference. That's why we try out the toddler, to make it very clear that the only difference here is the development and the age of the child. But it shouldn't be considered any different. We shouldn't just be seeing the toddler as a child, but the baby in the womb not as a child. So when you discuss that, then it gets into the faulty moral reasoning of what a choice is. You can go to the next slide. This we already covered a little. It's just talking about women who have gone through abortion, the pain of that. Patricia Heaton is a famous actress who no longer is really in movies and stuff anymore because she is so outspoken about her pro-life stance. But she said abortion is a reflection that society has failed women. And I've already sort of spoken on this, and it's true. To tell them that that's what they need is really just to belittle them and to not give them true empowerment. So you can keep going. Sorry, we already talked about all this, so you can skip. But this is just, if you know anyone who has gone through an abortion and is struggling, these are just resources for you. Rachel's Vineyard, Project Rachel, Silent No More, and then Abortion Recovery International. And there's also a website called Abortion Changes You, and that is a very good resource as well. And then, yeah, so these are just options for you, just if you know of someone who has suffered. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, the woman who suffered the abortion. Many people struggle with an abortion decision, not just the mother. We actually go door to door right now to support the pregnancy centers. It's our new pro-life future campaign. And I was door knocking a couple weeks ago, and we knocked on the door of a young man, and he admitted to us that nine years earlier his girlfriend had chosen, his ex-girlfriend now, had chosen an abortion without telling him. And it was very clear that he was still struggling from that decision 9 years later. And he just thanked us for what we were doing of spreading the resources that we have. And it was so sincere, and it was beautiful to see that he was able to, you know, share that with us and share his gratitude, but it was also so sad to see how long this kind of thing can really haunt someone. That's why it's so important to kind of help people heal, because dealing with baggage from a decision can be so hard with moving forward with life, and we do want to help people feel forgiven and feel able to kind of move on from that bad situation. So we do want to, just as much as we want to save the babies who haven't been born yet, we want to also help the people who have struggled from an abortion decision in the past. Next slide. And this is our faulty moral reasoning poster. A lot of people you say you make the scientific standpoint for life, you make the philosophical standpoint for life, but then you get people who say, well, I'm personally against abortion, but I don't want to impose my beliefs on someone else. It's not for me to say. And then a lot of people say, well, if you don't like abortion, then fine, don't have one. There are certain things in our world and our life that we will always say is wrong. It's wrong to rape a woman, and it's wrong to abuse a child. It's wrong to murder someone. So clearly there are claims that are always wrong. So why are we saying now, okay, well, it's not for me to say? If you get someone who says, I'm against abortion, but it's not for me to say, then you should ask them, well, why are you personally opposed to it? If there's nothing wrong with it, then you shouldn't be opposed to it. It shouldn't be something that you say, I wouldn't do it, but. Usually if we say we wouldn't do it, it's because we have a moral issue with it. And even if we don't want to point that out, we want to believe this whole, you do you, your opinion, my opinion, it's all subjective. There are certain things that they don't sit right with us, and it's because they are immoral. This argument, if you don't like abortions, don't have one. Well, what if we said too, if you don't like slavery, don't own a slave? Obviously, you would never say to own a slave is up to your choice. It's just morally wrong. If you say, okay, fine, just go with that argument. If you don't want a slave, don't have one. Everyone will say, well, that's not what I'm saying. But it is what you're saying. It is you saying, whatever's your opinion, fine, you be okay with that, and I'm going to go over here and be okay with what I think. The second you say, if you don't agree with it, don't do it, but let everybody else, then, the serial killer who thinks it's okay to kill someone should just be okay. It should be allowed to just do that because it's what he thinks. So clearly we have to make a line. There are some things that are a matter of choice, like your ice cream, but some things are not a matter of choice. They are simply wrong or right. And it's really important to kind of push them on that. Why are you personally wrong with it, but you think it should be okay for other people? Eventually you're going to have to push them to say they're wrong with it because they know it's killing a human being. And I actually watched this in a YouTube video by a pastor at Apologetics Church. He was talking to 3 women who were on the sidewalk and were pro-choice. And eventually, after being very careful and kindly talking to them and kind of getting them to see why their view was wrong, they admitted they hadn't really thought about it. They were just for women's rights. So many women just think, I'm just supporting women. And it's great. They're coming from this loving, this desire to help women, but they don't see that in trying to help women, they're actually severely damaging those women and also killing the little women in the womb. So he was able to really kind of make them think about what they were saying, and eventually a girl said, yes, it is really sad because an abortion does kill a little baby, but the mother shouldn't be able to make that choice. And in the end, it's just because they were so set on the right of the mother that they had completely disregarded the right of that little baby. And they, even admitting that it was a human being, they still said the mother was more important. So we need to be really clear that if you say that, then you're just saying certain human beings are more important than others. And that's how we get to slavery and discrimination and certain people overpowering others. So really take a stand and push them to admit that abortion is uncomfortable because it's wrong. People don't like to use the word abortion. They like to talk about, they're trying to sell chemical abortions now and just deliver them online, and they're calling them missed period pills.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they're advertising them as missed period pills. So clearly they don't want to own up to the fact that this is really just you taking a pill online that you get in your door and, taking it at home, and you're going to watch your little baby come out of you because that's what happens in a chemical abortion. So many women don't know what's going to happen. And I've talked to women online who are suffering through this. They say they thought it was a clump of cells, and they have their chemical abortion, and their baby comes out, and they can see their little baby that's miscarried. They can see it's a person, and they're just traumatized because they thought it was just like skipping and like missing a period, But it's a miscarriage. It's losing a human being. And thankfully, there are certain states right now that are trying to pass a law that if you have a miscarriage, you're able to go on maternity or paternity leave. And that's a beautiful thing. It's acknowledging that that baby in the womb wasn't just a clump of cells, it was a human being that you have now lost. And to say that a miscarriage or a chemical abortion is just a missed period is so insulting to every woman who's had a miscarriage and felt a terrible, terrible loss. I think of my sister. She had a miscarriage for her first, and it was horrible for all of us. We were so sad, and it wasn't sad. I mean, there's a reason it's sad, because it's a human being that is, you are so excited to meet this little life, and then all of a sudden, the ability to meet that baby is gone because you know that they've died. We weren't excited because it was a clump of cells. We were excited because it was a person. It was my little niece or nephew. And every miscarriage that happens, it's someone's child, it's someone's niece or nephew. It is not a missed period, and it's so insulting to advertise it like that, but it makes it easier. When we don't state the truth, it makes it easy to just slide it over, sideswipe it, act like it doesn't matter, act like we can just put it in the past. But for the woman who goes through that, she's never going to be able to just put it in the past. It's really easy for the doctors or the Planned Parenthood workers who aren't going through it, or the abortion workers, or anybody who's telling a woman to have an abortion. It's easy for them to say because they're not going through it. Who's going to deal with it? The woman. And all the pain that goes along with it is going to be her pain. And so we need to be doing our best to make it so that there's as little pain as possible by telling her, yes, it's going to be a hard 9 months, but it's going to be the best day ever when you finally get to see your baby. And you won't have any regrets. It might be a challenge, but whoever regrets doing the hard thing, every time we're able to kind of overcome, kind of stretch ourselves and do something we didn't think we could, at the end we just see it as a great victory. Wow, that was amazing. I overcame that, and I thought I wasn't strong enough, but I was. That's what we need to be showing people, that you're going to be happy when you do something you never thought you could. Abortion, as horrible as it is, it's not very long, like the procedure itself, Women go through it and they think it's going to make all their dreams come true, and they're left feeling so sad. And there are women, there was a woman once at a talk. This woman was speaking out, and she was talking about something pro-life, and there was a woman in the audience who just kept being very angry, wanting her to stop talking. But she came up to her at the end, and after being very angry and not wanting to listen, finally, the woman just said, what's really wrong? What's really wrong? And she said, nobody ever told me about what it was going to be like after. She basically admitted that all of her anger, it was really just this horrible sadness and emptiness that she felt from her abortion. That everybody told her it was going to make everything good. You just go in, you take a pill, boom. But then she didn't know what was going to happen when all of a sudden her little baby was dead. Like I said, you're still a mom, it's just that your little baby is gone. And the pain that she had been going through, she'd been lying to herself, I'm for women's rights, and I just want to tell the world that yes, abortion is great. No, really, she just wanted someone to listen to her and embrace her and love her and tell her, you're going to get through this, we're going to help you heal through this. I'm so sorry this happened to you and that you weren't told the truth. We need to be telling women the truth, because the pain that's going to come after that abortion is like nothing they'll ever be able to understand, and they'll never be able to take it back. And to think, oh, that's better than being poor, or going through school with a little baby is absurd. Like, going through the hard things is going to just leave you stronger and stronger, but an abortion is just going to leave you weak and regretful. So we do need to just be letting women know that that's not the answer. The answer is to have us rally and to kind of, find your support system and find what's going to make you do everything, everything you want, but also have your baby. So we really do need to take a stand and be a voice, because if women don't feel like someone's going to support them, then it will be easier to make the terrible decision of giving up their baby, but if they know someone's there to help them, they're going to feel strong and they're going to be able to, you know, to take those steps to have, to give life to their baby. Next slide. We already went through this, sorry I didn't keep up with the slides, but next one. So these are just more resources for apologetics. If you know, if you want to keep learning about all of this, there are great books. Justice for All is a great website. Stephanie Gray is an amazing apologist. She also writes on assisted suicide, but she has a book called Love Unleashes Life, which is specifically on the beauty of giving oneself for the sake of another. I haven't read it yet, I really want to. But yeah, I think she kind of goes full circle. She talks about abortion, but I think also she'll use real life examples of people, nursing people already born, to see the beauty of going through something hard for the sake of a human being. Because no challenge is more important than the life of the human life that you know, that is at stake. So if you want to write some of these down, these resources. But yeah, it's just good to keep staying aware of the arguments. This kind of goes through a very basic, you know, idea of why it's wrong, but you know, it is such an important issue that we need to be always trying to grow and better understand how to defend babies and just defend life, because it really is the most important job that we have, to take care of one another. At the end of the day, what you do for a living doesn't really matter, it's who you have. You know, what you do in your life doesn't matter if you don't have anyone to share it with. We do, the most important thing is that we have people to share our lives with. You know, we are very social people. Man, it is not good for man to be alone. So what's going to make us happiest is our families and our loved ones. Every time you choose life, you're only expanding that beauty and that love. And to take that away would only leave you, you know, sadder and less fulfilled. So we do need to be sharing that what greater gift than to give life? Nothing. And you know, a fourth of the generation is missing from abortion. It's an outrageous number of abortions every year, and it just keeps happening. There are just millions of babies. Over 1 million is killed every year. I'm actually, while I'm here in California, I'm trying to do a Pink Crosses tour, is what it's called, and we set it's 972 Pink Crosses, and it represents all the babies killed by Planned Parenthood every single day. And that's just by Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood kills almost 1,000 every single day, but nationally, abortions in general every day is 3,000. So when you think about that outrageous number, that every single day 3,000 babies are dying, all of those people are people that, you know, could have been our brother or our sister or our best friend or our doctor, or, you know, everybody complains about, oh, we haven't cured cancer, but what if he was supposed to come along, he or she? You know, there are plans that God has for the people that he creates, and only he knows those plans. So for us to say your life isn't as important as this situation is to snuff out all the potential of that human being, and we have no idea what they would have accomplished if we had given them the chance. So one human life is more valuable than anything that is, you know, to save one life is more important than any other thing you could do, because the value of one life is immeasurable. So we need to be fighting for those at all costs, doing whatever we can to save every life that we can. So that's why in the pro-life movement, when it gets daunting, you know, it can be very daunting to think what we're up against. But even if we just save one life in our efforts, it will have been worth it. So, you know, when I feel like, wow, we just have, Planned Parenthood is a big organization with a lot of money, and they have a big voice. When I think about that, and I kind of, you know, it can be overwhelming of how much we have to do to overturn Roe v. Wade, I just think, well, we just have to start small, and we have to start on the sidewalk. Every sidewalk matters, every woman matters, every woman we can touch is worth all of our attempts and all of our struggles to even just save one. So I just try to keep thinking that, and then when you focus on your passion and conviction and that it just matters saving one at a time, I do think we will build an army that's just saving babies every single day across the world.
And being on the sidewalk, Abby Johnson says it goes down about 79%. Almost 80% of abortions will go down just from one person being on the sidewalk. So I really encourage you, if you can, to kind of be out there as much as you can. There are abortion clinics everywhere. Sadly, in California, I think there's 111 across the state of California, just Planned Parenthoods alone. So you can usually just Google it where it's going to be. It's probably not very far. I think there is one in Thousand Oaks. Just kind of trying to take time to go as often as you can, just to say a prayer, just to be a voice, just hold a sign, talk to one woman. You never know the impact that's going to have. And they have said that even some people, if they're just watching a person on the sidewalk, if they see them, they'll literally just drive past and they won't go into their appointment. So you might be saving babies and you won't even know it. You don't know all the lives that you touch, all the opportunities. And you might never hear a woman say, I chose life for you, my baby because of you. But, in eternity we will know. So I just encourage you to get out there as much as you can and to keep fighting and keep educating. Just talking about these things to the people that you meet and to other pro-life people. The more we can build a culture of life and build a team of people fighting for life, the more we're going to be successful. The abolitionists had to fight really hard, but they didn't give up, and eventually, slavery became illegal, and now, thanks be to God, it is unthinkable, and this abortion is just the discrimination of our time, the biggest issue of our time, that we have to be undaunted, and we have to be just very convicted to be like the abolitionists and get rid of abortion, because if we don't, until we stop it, just so many babies are going to be dying, and we need to fight for them. People will say, well, if it becomes illegal, they'll just find a way to, have illegal abortions. And yes, that's true, sadly, but there are so many things that are illegal that people still find a way to do. That doesn't mean those things are right. Just because, people will find a way to get illegal abortions doesn't mean we should make it legal, because, okay, does that mean that because people will find a way to kill, we should just make killing not illegal? Of course not. Obviously, we need to work to make it unthinkable. We should be in a world where the thought of killing the baby in the womb would just never pass a mother's mind. And that's what we need to work to. Once we make it illegal, then we say, now we have to just convince the world to never even entertain the possibility. Just like now, people would never entertain the possibility of having a slave. It wasn't very long ago that this was common. Abortion is common now, but we hope for a future where suddenly, all of a sudden, the whole world will agree that it's unthinkable and we would never do it. So, sorry, that was very long, but I appreciate your patience, and I think all the rest of the resources are mainly for students. But yes, if you have any questions, feel free to ask questions.